Hey guys, it's Charlie and Toothless over here, and I just got out of seeing Together, and then earlier this week I also saw the movie Weapons. Now there's going to be a double review for both of these movies. Weapons and Together are the two horror offerings that are out right now for the month of August. Okay, so let's unpack Together first. Together is a body horror type movie, which is basically about this newly engaged couple that moved to a small town because the girlfriend in this one is a substitute teacher, and she found a new opportunity, and her boyfriend, who is a 35-year-old struggling musician type, decide to relocate for her specifically. Now, along the way of exploring their new town, they wander into the woods and they stumble into basically a hole where there is the remnants of a old church. Basically, they stumble into a hole, they find the remnants of a sunken in old church, and this all happens during a storm, so there's no way for them to dig themselves out, so they basically wait out the storm in this hole, where they find this well of water. Basically, this well of water that they in turn drink from, and then they all of a sudden find themselves in quite the predicament where they are literally together. As I said, it is a body horror. I don't want to give too much away about this one. It is a really good story, and it really kept me engaged, so I enjoyed it. Now, Weapons. Weapons it's like a Tarantino style horror movie because it's non-linear. It has an A to B to C to D storyline, which basically interconnect. Then when you see the full scope of the picture, it all makes sense. This is why I call it like a Tarantino type horror, because it is very much like a Pulp Fiction type. I also forgot to mention that Together had elements of like a giallo, like a modern giallo to it. And then Weapons also kind of has elements of a giallo too. I feel like these were kind of inspired by Italian Giallo horror bit, like a lot of different inspirations. And also in Together there was very much inspiration from Evil Dead 2. Dead by Dawn. But yeah, okay, so Weapons. Essentially what happens is an entire classroom of students minus one basically sneak out of their houses in the middle of the night and go missing. And everybody in the town is frantic. They're looking for questions. They want to know what's going on. And all areas point to the school teacher, because it was basically her entire class minus one who decide to escape. And you also learn through the course of these stories that she has a history as a teacher of getting too close to her students, maybe essentially just caring too much. And that's why the parents think that she is somehow, in some weird way, involved in everything that's going on, which would essentially not make sense to the common moviegoer who's just basically getting this synopsis, because, I mean, it's dead in the middle of the night. They're not in class, so the teacher's not really going to have anything to do with why they randomly disappeared and why only one of her students is still around. But they basically use her as a scapegoat to just blame everything on her and make her life essentially a living hell. Until you get further into the story, and you realize how intricate everything really is when you get to the bottom of what is going on, because essentially I really don't know how else to unpack this one. That's why it took me a while to get this review out, because I don't want to give too much away. I want people to be able to see the movie and enjoy it for what it is. But essentially, there's something more sinister going around in the town that's not necessarily involving the teacher, but somebody else. That is a focus of one of the other stories. And that's all I want to say. These were both really good movies. I see these two as companion pieces. Like, you have to see one and the other together to get the full scope of where newer horror is kind of going right now, because I'm starting to like this. And then, of course, we also had another one called Bring Her Back, which was also kind of a really smartly written horror movie. Starting to see more and more of these kind of trickling their way in. So they're not all just like reboots and requels and franchise type movies. There are still original ideas that are out there that are inspired by other things. It's just sometimes you really have to search and pick and just kind of feel out what is going to be a horror that's going to stick with you. I will give both Weapons and Together an 8. An 8 out of 10, and that's a strong rating, I feel. I'm going to say 8 out of 10 because they're the type of movies that I do like, but the question is, I don't know if it's going to be something that I'm going to revisit often, because they're both experience type. Like I said, one is like a body horror, and the other one is like a Pulp Fiction style non-linear story that goes from A to B to C to D. So there's a lot to unpack in that, and even I had to just kind of take a little step back after Weapons and just kind of like really collect my thoughts and ask myself, did I really like this movie, or was it just something that was there? And I really did like it. I really did like that movie, as I did Together. Both great movies, both out now. Hopefully, if you guys are on the fence about seeing it, I just hope this kind of gives you guys a better idea if this is going to be something that you're going to want to see, or if this is just like a video for me getting my thoughts out. All right, talk to you guys later. Peace.